Hello everyone, welcome to this video briefing for the BSS037-2 Assessment 1. So that's the Managing Business Complexity unit. So we've got quite a lot to cover in this briefing, but we are going to try and move at a fair clip. So the assignment itself is a written piece of coursework. So it is a written report of 2,400 words. The same university rules apply. So 10% is permitted in terms of going over the word count. So your maximum really is 2,640 words. That excludes the reference list, citations, that excludes any appendices, but otherwise is the entirety of the main text of the assignment. It is worth 40% of your unit grade. So 60% for assignment 2 will come from your semester 2 or your second semester project. This is the assignment in your first semester for this unit. We're going to discuss generative AI near the end of this video, but the short kind of explanation is you're not permitted to use it for this assignment. Neither is self-plagiarism permitted. So self-plagiarism is using sections or pages from previous assignments. That would be of limited relevance anyway, since your previous units haven't had much overlap with this unit, but even if they did, it wouldn't be permitted for this assignment. So in terms of what we're going to cover in this video, the bulk of it is going to be looking at the actual assignment task itself, but that's going to tie in with the unit concepts and theories that you should use for this assignment, what the assessment timeline is, the structure that I would recommend using, as well as a mark scheme. And then lastly, as I've just said, we are going to look at AI usage and the policies on Grammarly, Quillbot, ChatGPT, Google Translate, and other AI platforms and tools. So if we start with the assessment task itself, so you should be either have already looked through the assessment brief. If you haven't, please go read through that and then come back and finish watching this video. I am going to have screenshots of the assessment brief throughout the video. So looking at the actual assessment task, it is relatively straightforward. You're asked to prepare and submit a report, so in this case a formal business report, reviewing the complexity that emerges from the structures and processes of a business in the case study. So you're reviewing the complexity of the case study business, and you're asked to include 4 specific elements. So identify 4 properties of complex systems, apply tools such as rich pictures and cause and effect diagrams, provide recommendations, and then lastly include a completed process log, particularly focusing on the checkpoint activity. Now, as well as this, you also have additional guidance on the assessment brief, which includes things like, you need to demonstrate your ability to conduct research. You need to present your work as a formal report. Make sure you include citations, both in text and as a reference list. Be able to demonstrate your analytical ability in terms of drawing out key themes from the tools that you're applying. And showing your ability to understand how complex systems operate in the real world within given business scenarios. So that's your guidance that's provided in the assignment. We are going to work our way through these and tackle the major questions that would emerge. So we're going to take those 4 tasks, and that's going to be the cornerstone of how we're going to understand the assessment as a whole. But at this point, we do want to stop with a quick warning. So the question of what unit concepts and theories to use is one that often comes up. Partly, I think, because students are used to taking some kind of given case study and applying a specific theory to it, but there is something I just want to make sure everyone is clear of. So this is an assessment of your learning on this unit specifically, which means that we are trying to evaluate and prove to the external examiners that you have understood the unit, so the managing business complexity unit, particularly have understood the theories and concepts on the unit. So the three things that I want everyone to avoid, because it will either trigger a viva or result in a fail, or at very least result in a severely degraded grade. So if you submit a report, or let's say a student submits a report with no unit concepts or theories at all, that will raise major concerns. So on one hand, it means that you've failed to demonstrate your learning on the unit. So that's a problem in of itself. But it also raises major concerns because, if we receive a report that looks like it was written by a very good student, but a student who's studying at a completely different university on a completely different unit or module, who's covering completely different concepts and theories than the ones that you've been learning in class, that will raise questions. It is not evidence of wrongdoing in of itself, but it is likely to trigger a viva to investigate further. So please avoid that. Remember, it's not a test of your kind of intrinsic ability to go away and read other web pages. It's a test of how well you've learned the unit material. So you need to make sure you're using the unit material as intended. Reports that completely ignore the assessment brief requirements and attempt to present their own kind of response to only the very first line of the assessment brief, which says, write a report on the complexities of the given business in the case study, but ignores all the other pages, instructions, and requirements of the brief, again, will either trigger a viva or result in a fail. And for some reason, reports that decide to use an alternative case study. You've been given a specific case study to work on. It's on the Brio show. It is going to be highlighted and discussed in class. It's going to be, the focus of our additional support session as well. So that is the case study that you must use. Right, with that warning over, let's jump straight into the four elements of the assessment task. So the first one you've been asked to do, to derive kind of or to discuss the four properties of complex systems that you can see from the case study. So there's just two simple steps to this. The first, you should ask yourself, what are the properties of complex systems? And then you apply those to the case study provided to identify where those properties are present and to discuss how those properties are demonstrated or illustrated in the case study. In terms of where you can find these properties, well, they're covered in the very first week of the unit, so you would have already received the teaching for this particular task. But it isn't a particular secret. We are going to go through it as well. But you will need to go back, either go through your lecture notes, or you can revisit the week one lecture slides, and you apply those four properties to the case study itself. If for whatever reason you didn't attend the lecture, or you're struggling to make sense of the lecture slides because you don't have the benefit of the lecture itself, remember you do have the textbook to go through. But like I said, it's not a particular secret. This is the basic unit content that was covered in the very first week of the unit. You have these four key properties that complex systems share. So you have emergence, you have non-linearity, you have self-organization, and you have connectivity. So these four properties that you are looking for in a case study, and you're pulling them out, highlighting and discussing them. And as I said, please do make sure, remember, it's not just the lecture slides. The lecture slides are there as almost a to provide a structure and guidance for the actual in-class sessions, but you have an entire reading list, and you have lots of online electronic resources as well as part of that. So that's the first step of the assessment task. Identify the four properties of complex systems and whether they're present in the case study. The second one will be using tools to illustrate the complexities of the case study. So the assessment brief mentions two in particular, and those are the big ones that you really do want to use. So rich pictures and cause and effect diagrams. These are covered early on in the unit, so you'll be covering rich pictures in week 3, and you'll be covering cause and effect diagrams in week 4. You may have come across cause and effect diagrams before. They've got all kinds of names in different fields. Fishbone diagrams is another common way to refer to cause and effect diagrams. But they'll be covered in the session. So in your classes for weeks 3 and 4, you have the lecture slides, and as before, you've got the textbooks and other learning materials as well. So what you want to do here, to use these 2 techniques, apply them to the information that you've gathered from the case study in order to further understand and analyze the case study, particularly the actual complexities, the business complexities present in the case study. So for fishbone diagrams, you look at the end effect and you work your way backwards. That's why they're called cause and effect diagrams. And rich picture examples as well, you're using the technique to understand some of the underlying complexities and the underlying pictures present in the case study scenario itself, or the case study business itself rather. So that's our second task. The third task that you've been given as part of the assessment, give theory supported recommendations for the case study. So this is for the actual case study business. And this, again, once you go through the unit, and remember, this assignment is not due until week 9. It is relatively straightforward. You're going to study a range of concepts and theories. They're going to have general recommendations for how to operate in an environment of complexity, of business complexity. You go through those, you see which ones you think are going to directly help the case study company. If so, it's going to be your job to make the argument for those recommendations in your assessments, in your actual reports. And the fourth and final task is to complete the process log, or complete a process log based on the checkpoint activity in particular. So you have a template for this on the Brio Show. It's in the assessment 1 folder, and it's a template for a fairly detailed record of your process moving through the assessment. So I would strongly advise starting this in class during your assessment support session, but also you can start it at the very beginning of your process. It gives some hints and tips, so you can see now on the video, the screenshot. The first thing, action, create a folder to store relevant materials, and then make notes on the task and submission. So step-by-step hints and tips for ways to structure your activities on the as part of assessment planning and assessment preparation, but it has a particular focus as well on the checkpoint activity. So this is a good time to tackle our next question of what is the assessment timeline. Well, you're listening to the assessment briefing video now, released in week 3. As part of your week 3 or week 4, and or really depending on the location you're studying at, so Luton, Bedford, London, and so on, the actual in-class assessment sessions, you'll have discussions of the assessment. Week 5, there's going to be an in-class checkpoint activity to carry out, and that's going to feed directly into the process log. So there's an entire section of the process log dealing with the checkpoint activity. So it is really important that you're there and present for the checkpoint activity. And then week 6, there's going to be an online assessment Q&A session. So there will be a link posted on the Brio shows that you'll be able to use to join an online session where you can ask questions and answer, or you can ask questions and get answers rather. And that leads into your actual submission of the assignment in week 9. So it's not an imminent deadline. You do have approximately 6 weeks, or 7 weeks actually, to complete the work needed for the assignment. I understand that it requires understanding the unit material. It requires you to have actually sat through the lectures and seminars. So, part of that 7-week period is going to be attending the classes, understanding fishbone diagrams, cause effect diagrams, understanding rich pictures, and so on. But a large portion of that is also going to be taking part in activities like the checkpoint activity to get you prepared. And then part of it is going to be writing up your final assignment as well. And that that completes our kind of four major tasks, which, the four elements of the assessment task itself, or the four subtasks that are mentioned in the assessment brief. Now, the question that will always be asked is, what structure should we use in writing the assignment itself? Well, these four tasks give us quite a nice kind of blueprint for how the structure should be. So if we translate these four tasks into, say, headings of a report, you'd get something like this. I mean, you don't have to use these at all, but something along these lines would be good. So complex system properties of the case study. So that's you examining the four key properties complex systems have and how they can be identified in the case study. That would essentially be a section unto itself. Using those tools, or using rich pictures and fishbone diagrams to illustrate or explore the complexity of the case study, you can name that section something like mapping and discussion of case study details. The theories can just be called, the recommendations could just be called recommendations or theory supported recommendations, and the process log is a process log. So that gives us four distinct sections already, and we can add to that. Remember, the assignment brief said that it needs to be a formal report, so a formal business report. So there's everything that you would normally have as part of a business report, and we place it into a pretty standard report structure. I am going to mention a couple of things as we go through here, because there's some things that it is worth highlighting as you move through. So you would have an executive summary at the beginning of the report. The purpose of an executive summary is really to highlight the premise or the purpose of the report. So what is the report there for? Why was it written? And to give an indication of the key findings of the report. So an executive summary should not be a secret. It shouldn't be a trailer. It shouldn't say this report is going to look at this issue and it's going to make recommendations. Well, sure, but I shouldn't have to then read the entire report to find out what the recommendations are. An executive summary is there to allow the reader to decide if this report is relevant to the task they're doing and whether they should or shouldn't read it. So they need to have an indication of what your recommendations are. So an executive summary, which is typically about 2 short paragraphs or half a page, whatever is shorter, that's the convention. It's excluded from the word count, and you need to write it at the end of the process. I know it comes as the first page, but there's absolutely no reason for you to write the executive summary at the beginning, because you don't know what your report is going to have. You don't know what the recommendations are going to be. You don't know what the key arguments are going to be yet. So it is something to write after you finish the report. You'd have your title page. Is worth just highlighting that everything is now anonymous marking. So you'd include your student ID is fine, the unit code, so BSS037-2, and the assignment number, which is assessment 1. There's no need to put your name on there. It is anonymously marked, and Turnitin has anonymous marking enabled, so please just put your student ID number at most in there. There's no need to put anything else in there. You need to have a table of contents. Just a couple of things to note. Number one, it should go without saying, a table of contents on a report that doesn't have page numbers is not particularly useful. So make sure you understand how to use, whether you're using Pages or Microsoft Word, you know how to properly format your report so it has footers or headers, it has page numbers enabled. And secondly, please don't do a manually created table of contents. It usually looks pretty bad, and we're trying to develop our professional practice here. So developing our employability skills is not difficult at all. You can use Microsoft Word's built-in tools to automatically generate a table of contents very easily. You just need to know how to use headers. There is the study hub within the university can help with this. You can email the academic librarians if you really need help with this as well. And there's a ton of guides online, so get to grips with Microsoft Word's formatting tools, the headings, and auto-generate your table of contents. It looks much more professional than trying to do it manually. You'd have your introduction. So any good introduction should do three major things. It should further explain or specify the premise or the purpose of the piece of work. It should provide any necessary background or contextual information. So in this case, you may want to give some background context about the case study company that you've been provided, and any other background context that you feel is important. And it should give an overview of how the rest of the report is structured. So you may want to say a few things about the three major sections in the main body of the report. Those major sections are what we've covered in terms of the three major subtasks of the assignment task. So your complex system properties, your use of tools to illustrate the case study or explore the case study, and then lastly your theory supported recommendations for the case study company. That should lead into your conclusion, and your conclusion would really be restating the key or core points from your report, as well as kind of restating the key reasons for your recommendations. There should be clear connective tissue in the previous three sections. So some kind of key properties, complex system properties in the case study, leading into your exploration in, say, cause and effect diagrams, and that should be leading directly into perhaps one of the recommendations you make. So there should be connective tissue throughout your report, and your conclusion would simply restate the major findings or the key points. There should be nothing new in your conclusion. Then you have your reference lists. I've skipped over those two, but your reference list and also your completed process log would typically be placed after the reference list as well. Please do make sure you give a lot of effort to the process log. Not only is it the fourth of your four major elements in the assessment task, it's also very much present in the mark scheme. So you have 5 sections of the mark scheme, and they're not precisely geared towards each of your 4 major subtasks, but they do largely fall along those lines. And then you have a 5th part of the mark scheme, your presentation and style, which deals with things like, business report format, referencing, and so on. But if you look at your 4 major sections of the mark scheme, so we've got 20% here on discussion of sources of business complexity, and this would cut across your 2 of your tasks. So some of this would be taken from your complex system properties that you're identifying in the case study, and perhaps some of it would also be drawn from your second section, your application of tools, so fishbone and rich pictures diagrams. But that's really kind of identifying and discussing the sources of business complexity present in the case study. So making sure you show how you understand the theoretical side of business complexity, and you've applied those concepts to the case study. That's worth 20% of your final assessment grade. 25% is problem conceptualization. So again, this is directly from the second section. So your use of rich picture and cause and effect or fishbone diagrams, and using that to know how well you've used those to explore and communicate complexities, how well you've used those to illustrate complexity within the case study, and that's worth 25% of your unit grade. 25% is based on analysis and critical thinking. So this isn't exclusively drawn from the third section, but it is largely drawn from the third section, how well you have made your recommendations, so your theory supported recommendations, and how well they're supported by evidence as well. Remember, one of the sections in the assessment brief, how to get a good grade, was evidence or demonstration of your research ability. So here, make sure it is supported by evidence as well as drawn from application of theory. That's worth 25% as well. And then your fourth section here, ability to conduct integrated study. So this is 20% of your unit grade, drawn largely, not exclusively, but largely from your process log. So the process log isn't just a requirement; it actually carries significant weighting in the actual rubric, in the mark scheme. So demonstrating that you have clear progression in terms of your assessment of your own skills, moving through the assignment preparation process, demonstrating your application of the feedback that you'll be provided as part of the checkpoint activity, as well as your self-reflection as part of your self-evaluation and your self-assessment. So make sure you don't just fill in the process log with minimal information. You want to give it a good amount of attention and a good amount of detail to pick up as many marks here as possible. And the last section of the mark scheme is just 10% for presentation of style. So this is your logical structure used for the report, effective use of referencing both in text and reference list, and your general standard of professional presentation. Brilliant. And the last thing that I wanted to cover in this briefing video, because I know it does get a lot of questions, is the use of AI tools and platforms. Some assessments within the university will actively use AI platforms. So I know some of my other units that you'll study next year in your final year, such as data visualization, will actively have you use AI platforms to help you as part of the assessment process, and you're actually documenting your use of AI, and you get marked on how well you've used AI tools. This is not one of those assessments. It says very clearly at the top of the assignment brief that the use of AI tools is not permitted. So some assessments it'll be permitted in a limited sense, and some assessments is not permitted at all. So it should be very clear that if there's any suspicion that ChatGPT or other AI tools are being used to generate text for your reports, that will trigger a Viva, and if needed, work will be forwarded onto the academic conduct panel. But I just want to make clear that it's not just about ChatGPT. Things such as Quillbot and Grammarly are not permitted either. These are AI tools. You may not realize it, but it is generative AI nonetheless, and they are not permitted. Grammarly changes the actual structure, meaning, words and grammar of a work, often to the point that the person who wrote the original work isn't able to explain what it means. That's a problem. If we point to words or phrases that are used frequently in your report and we say, what does this mean? And you're not able to explain, and you say, I use Grammarly, I don't really know what that word means, I just use Grammarly. That's academic dishonesty. I mean, you're submitting work that you can't explain the meaning of words and phrases. That's a problem. The solution is to improve your language, right? So if you're using a translation software and you're not bothering to actually learn from the output, you're just using it and copying and pasting it, you're not actually improving your language skills at all. So similarly, if you want to improve your grammar and the standard of your written or academic English, please improve the standard of your academic or written English. Don't just use tools like Grammarly. It will cause problems. It may get you called into a Viva. It is not permitted under both unit policy, but also more importantly, departmental school policy as well. Same thing goes for Quillbot as well. If you want to paraphrase work, there's two things you should do. Number one, even though you're paraphrasing, you still need to reference, right? You're drawing from something which is not your own. You're drawing your ideas or your knowledge from an external source, so you need to reference it. Now, if you want to paraphrase it, don't use Quillbot. Again, you won't necessarily understand the output, and that's going to cause problems when result in a Viva. Instead, what I always say is very simple. Read the paragraph that you want to paraphrase. Read it multiple times. Make sure you understand what that paragraph is saying. And then just delete it from your document and then recreate it in your own words from scratch. That is what you're supposed to do when you're paraphrasing. There's no need to complicate it and get yourself into any kind of academic issues or be accused of academic dishonesty because you're using an AI platform like Quillbot, when what you really want to do is you read a paragraph, you think this is really helpful or useful, I want to use this, read it a couple of times, delete it, give yourself 10 seconds, and then rewrite it in your own words. That's the purpose. That's a key skill. If that's difficult, well, then that's a skill that you need to develop. And the same thing goes for Google Translate as well. You can use Google Translate freely to translate individual words or even individual sentences, but you are not permitted to use Google Translate to translate large portions of text, so large, entire pages, the entire assessment, or kind of major sections. You do have to write the work yourself in English. If that's, I understand that we do have students where English is not our native language. I mean, it's I came to this country when I was very young, but I had, I'm in the same position to a degree here as well. But again, the solution is to improve our English language skills, not to write it in a different language and rely on an AI platform to translate it. It may well trigger a high AI percentage, but also you'll be in a position where someone asks you, "What does this sentence mean?" and you can't answer. And all you can say is, well, I don't know what that sentence means because I wrote it in a different language and I translated it using Google Translate. That's going to get you into major issues as well. Apologies for ending this video on such a down note, but I just want to make sure that there's absolutely no misunderstanding on what the policies on AI tools and platforms is. All right, brilliant. Take care all, and I hope to see everyone in our online Q&A session for this assignment. Take care.